Throughout my life, I've played a bunch of video games. The one genre that always keeps me hooked has been survivor games. However, while I've played and enjoyed my fair share of them, it seems to me like some survival games just go down a list, checking boxes for different mechanics that makes a game fall under this category. One of the most infamous and common ones is hunger, which in many cases becomes a chore that tends to become a limiting factor on my enjoyment of a game over the long term. This got me thinking about food, and it's not really because I'm hungry, but because it made me realize that food might be something that is annoying me in a survival game, but it's not an annoyance I perceive playing other games. So this made me ask, how do different developers implement food on their games? Such an expansive and complex game as The Witcher 3, with many mechanics that harmoniously interact with one another, seems to be one of the more lacklusters in terms of their food system. I really don't believe it was the centerpiece of the development process, as most food items just serve as healing items over a period of time. The more intricate mechanics, such as potion and decoctions, outright replace and dunk on any food item really. The food itself is quite irrelevant in most easier difficulties, as you would passively regenerate health regardless. And in harder difficulties, which is essentially the only way to play this game right honestly, you could use potions and decoctions to heal, such as a troll decoction that literally gives you a progressive healing, or even unlocking one of the abilities in Girl's leveling up system that just makes every piece of food last way longer. A set it and forget it style that leaves little room for expansion, the food mechanics in this game were never the stronghold, and just ransacking poor villagers just so I can get their bread and water always felt wrong in the context of an RPG, as while I was helping them get rid of monsters, I was robbing them blind. The food in The Witcher serves more of as an incentive to loot in the early game before unlocking these better healing items. But to that extent, I believe that it programs the player and teaches them to loot everything early on, as every potion, recipe, armor, or weapon you may want to craft needs components that are acquired through looting, as well as just straight up being loot items themselves. The game teaches the player how to fish instead of giving them a fish, helping them understand one of the basic mechanics of both the game and capitalism, to take from the weak and less fortunate than you.
Now, for the final question. Have you ever unlawfully acquired another man's movable goods? Chattels?
Meaning?
Meaning, have you ever waltzed into someone's home and taken something without their permission?
A couple times, but the owners never protested.
In the eyes of the law, that is no excuse, my good man.
Minecraft's food system is a bit more complex than The Witcher's. In Minecraft, you have a hunger bar that depletes as you do different activities in the game. Running and healing, for example, both cause your hunger bar to go down. However, differently from The Witcher, in Minecraft, if you don't eat, you will be in trouble, as you will stop healing and even lose the ability to run if your hunger drops too low. So, how do we get the hunger bar up? Well, you just eat. It's not that complicated really. However, eating ties back to the different mechanics that the game forces the player to interact with hunger. In this case, the gameplay limitation of being hungry organically pushes the player to interact with the flora and fauna of the game. Either through hunting, fishing, gathering, or farming, the players discover new elements of the game because of this mechanic. And there are a lot of recipes that you can make with different combinations of food items. Hunger, to this point, has the purpose of balancing the difficulty of the game in terms of combat and encounters with the healing and energy provided to move around, as well as introducing the player to different elements of the gameplay loop. What seems to fail in this structure of this system is how players with knowledge of different values behind these food items may optimize the fun out of the hunger completely. Once you discover that cooked pork and cooked steak are the most efficient items to keep hunger at bay, while putting little to no effort in gathering them, it turns elements like farming or fishing redundant, mostly to be enjoyed for the first-time players that don't know better, or by the people who would like to add farms and animals to cosplay as Stardew Valley players. As hunger goes, It makes sense that once you're hungry, your ability to perform different activities is limited. But making the solution a boring and redundant one prevents players from interacting with the systems that hunger was meant to introduce them to. Now that we're stepping up to a harder survival game, such as Don't Starve Together, we enter the territory where hunger starts to become more realistic. As in this game, as in the real world, well, if you don't eat, you could die. Not only that, as in Don't Starve, we have a sanity mechanic that can be increased with certain food items as well, making food twice as valuable. Unless you're a sweat that literally plays the whole game insane just to farm nightmare fuel. In Don't Starve, after your hunger reaches 0, you start to take damage until you eat something, otherwise you'll become a ghost. This game also has many characters that make the hunger mechanic not as monotonous as other games. A good example is Wolfgang. He has an increased rate at which hunger decreases, but can train to become a strong man able to provide the most damage in the game. Or Warley, who is a chef, therefore he is able to spice certain foods to add different buffs, such as extra damage, with the drawback of not being able to eat the same dish twice in a row, or eat anything that hasn't been prepared in the dish. And that takes me to one of the aspects I really love about the food in Don't Starve. You can of course just grab any food, cook it in a fire and eat it, but that would make the stats given to you less than what it could be accomplished with a dish. For example, the bread and butter of any Don't Starve player, meatballs, unless you're a vegetarian such as Ward, would be way more beneficial than eating the ingredients cooked by themselves. For example, 3 cooked berries and a morsel yields a meatball, healing for 3 points, getting hunger of 62.5, and sanity of 5. The same cooked berries would have yielded 12.5 hunger and 1 health each, and the morsel used for the dish 12.5 hunger and 1 health, coming up to a total of 50 hunger and 4 health. Making dishes allow you to take full advantage of the food in game. Preparing food not only requires a player to know the different recipes, but also makes the player learn how to gather each ingredient. And it is through this exploration that hunger helps the player feed their own game knowledge to survive even more. Hunger in Don't Starve helps the player learn how to survive this unforgiving world. As the seasons change, you would have to adapt accordingly to survive. For example, during winter, which is usually the first big test for a new player, anything that is planted will stop to grow until the next season, making food more limited, forcing players to prepare beforehand or get destroyed by the elements. It also forces each player to explore the world, looking for new sources of food. Hunger teaches the player how to interact with other systems the game provides as alternative solutions. For example, during winter, mining becomes critical once you realize you can get ice, and use set ice with meat to make the glorious meatballs. And past winter, you also have farming, that, to be honest with you, you may need a degree in math in order to figure out how to optimize your crops, but it is a viable option for a food source once you get the hang of it. Hunger just becomes another aspect of surviving, but once you get the hang of it, you can interact with other elements like the different bosses you can defeat to get some good loot. Another aspect that really helps to keep the game fresh is how differently you play the game based on the survivor you pick. And hunger is one of the elements to be considered here as well, as some characters have dietary restrictions, favorite foods, and others ignore food altogether like Warthog, who can keep himself full with souls he gathers from other mobs as they die. These elements can keep the game fresh as you explore the different ways to survive this world. Valheim has one of my favorite food systems ever. Being a survival game, you would think that they would have a hunger meter and you would just need to eat on a timer every time so you don't die. However, the way Valheim manages to intertwine food with game progression and playstyles is just magical to me.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Food, as in any survival game, is obtained by farming, hunting, fishing, and gathering. And as in some video games, you're able to cook meals to give you stronger values than each individual item. However, this game splits food in 3 categories: red foods for health, yellow foods for stamina, and white foods for a balance between them. And in the middle to late game, our fourth type is introduced, blue foods for mana. In this system, not only are you not pestered by the constant timer of food depletion that makes eating in a video game just another chore to get completed as you play, it allows the player to choose their playstyle and be rewarded for game progression, as better meals are gathered by progressing in your Viking adventure, unlocking new food items, crafting structures, and recipes. And with foods increasing health, stamina, or both, each player gets to pick and choose their combination based on their playstyle. Do you want to be an absolute unit and tank every hit in the game, installing the fear of God, or I guess gods in this world, onto your enemies? Just eat 3 red foods. Do you like going through life, exploring but aren't too keen in fighting everything you see? Eat 2 stamina foods and a health food, and you'll be running all over the place, just like Sonic. Do you need to conquer Mother Nature itself, destroy any semblance of life in nature until the woods scream your name in fear? 3 stamina foods would do. And as you reach the mid to late game, setting in the Mistlands, you unlock the blue foods that give you mana to cast spells and become the wizard you always wanted to be, since you never got that letter from Howard's. Completely changing your playstyle and the way you approach situations just by eating a different meal. The only drawback I see is having your health set at 25 HP when you have not eaten anything, as I have died more times than I want to admit by falling from a high place as I was building my base. The way Valheim treats food helps the player progress without feeling like they're just taking care of a mundane task, and it lets each player decide how they will build their own Viking to achieve the glory they deserve in Valhalla. In Red Dead Redemption 2, food is a vital core mechanic. Your character has 3 main cores and food fills up the health one, while alcohol and cigarettes fill the dead eye, and some foods and coffee fill the stamina core. In the game, each core center is depleted, healing or refueling the outer circle. While the outer circle may regenerate, it would only happen if there is enough energy left on the center core, which in turn is fueled by these refillables. So okay, it's a bit more complicated in terms of mechanics than survival games, but you won't die if you don't eat in time. If anything, it's more similar to how food is treated in The Witcher, helping you heal and all. The difference here is that it is a mixture of both Valheim and The Witcher. There is an aspect of realism that is to be considered, as with your character in Red Dead 2, if you eat too much or too little, over a period of time, you will gain or lose weight accordingly. This change, however, is not only a visual one, as Rockstar spares no details. Not like really, they literally coded horse balls shrinking and expanding based on the weather. But it also modifies the gameplay in a way akin to Valheim, as how eating different foods changes stats on your character. In Red Dead, if you eat too much, you'll become overweight, with a buff increasing damage resistance at the cost of your stamina regeneration rate, translating into a character with more health. On the other hand, if you eat less and lose some weight, your stamina will regenerate faster at the cost of a decrease in your damage resistance. Being overweight or underweight will cause a debuff to all cores draining 25% faster. There is also a cooking mechanic that ties in with the hunting you can do in the game, chasing prey, skinning them, and then using the meat to fuel yourself after you cook it in a camp. Even being able to add spices that you also gather, increasing the different attributes. And these meals don't expire, you can just stack them as long as you have the inventory space, and play through the game without a worry. And finally, the most realistic of all in terms of food, Project Zomboid. This indie zombie game has one of the deepest and most complex mechanics in about every aspect of survival, to the point that if you want to survive in this game, you may need to neglect your own needs in the real world. I mean, you have to deal with boredom, injuries, learning, reading, building, protecting yourself, suing, exploring, driving, and even more things that you won't even know can kill you until you're on your 20th playthrough trying to make it to Louisville. But for the purposes of this video, we'll be focusing of course on the food. Project Zomboid, I believe, really portrays the most realistic way food and hunger works, as well as combining multiple aspects of the food in many games previously discussed. For example, you will be looting the food you consume just like in The Witcher, and you'll be praying you find that can opener soon. Just like Don't Starve, if you don't eat, well, you die. But it takes it a step further, as just like in Red Dead Redemption, you will lose weight or become overweight if you eat too little or too much. Which then ties into how in Valheim you can change how you play based on what you eat. As in Project Zomboid, being underweight means lower strength, lower endurance, and being prone to injury, while being overweight or obese means a lower running speed as well as getting tired easily. Project Zomboid also takes into account the carbs, fats, and proteins you eat. Proteins help you gain experience in any of the strength earning activities such as exercising, and carbs and fat determine the values of weight gain. All this also includes the calories you can eat, that using a couple of formulas that simulate the BMI of a regular person determine whether or not you will lose or gain weight. One of the most realistic survival games there is, if you exclude the zombies and the graphics. Project Zomboid really takes food under one of the most realistic lights on a post-apocalyptic setting. To micromanage your calories and your survivals in general just makes something tick in my brain that really lets me enjoy this game, until I forget to turn off the oven while cooking some food ending my run. As many recipes there are in the world, as many ways developers personalize and present their own takes on food in different video games. There are many more interpretations and different elements that may affect gameplay such as these, but I wanted to talk about how a few of the games I like to play handle this so common yet so complex element of game development. It really goes to show how food can just be as simple as a healing mechanic, a complex and intertwined system of gameplay selection, a simple meter that needs to be filled up at all times, a way to introduce buffs and debuffs to a game, a way to modify performance, and a system of personalizing your character to a very deep level. Same goes with cooking, some more realistic than others, but it always adds an extra layer to a very interesting system. And for you, what is your favorite food in any favorite game? Feel free to drop an interesting mechanic I might have missed from this or any other game you know. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Have a great rest of your day.